The moment he hurt you, maybe he betrayed you, dismissed your worth, ignored your presence, acted as if you were nothing. And in that very second, something inside you screamed, "Tell him! Make him see how wrong he is! Let him realize what he just lost." But pause, because that's exactly what he expects. He's ready for the tears, for the accusations, for the rage. He thrives on it. Every dramatic outburst only strengthens his illusion of control. But there's one script he isn't prepared for: your silence. Not the cold, punishing kind. Not silence laced with bitterness, but conscious, mature silence. The silence of a woman who no longer fights, explains, or proves herself. As long as you react, he believes he still holds power over you. Even anger is a thread, a connection. He might walk away, but if you call him back, he remains on that pedestal. But when you remove yourself from the equation, when there is no explosion, no pain-laced monologue, no dramatic scene, that's when something terrifying happens in his mind. Because silence gives him no answers. So he starts searching for them within himself. And that's where he stumbles into the one thing he cannot control: his own shadow. It's not your words that confront him now. It's their absence. Carl Jung once said, "Real transformation begins in silence, when a person is left alone with their own reflection." Silence peels back the masks. It exposes the fear of being nothing, the fear of losing control, the fear that he is not the man he pretended to be. Now imagine what happens when you not only go silent, but turn all your energy inward, not for him, for yourself. That departure, it stops being weakness. It becomes power, and he feels it. Not because you're trying to prove a point, but because he can no longer prove one to himself. This is where it all begins to unravel. For the first time in a long time, he feels a silence, not as a pause between conflicts, but as the end of the game, the one where he's no longer the lead. And this silence isn't passive. It's full, full of your power. Now that you've stopped pouring energy outward, it flows back to you. Piece by piece, you reclaim everything you gave away. All the justifications, all the mental spirals, all the attempts to reach a closed heart. Your energy is no longer lost in the abyss where it wasn't appreciated. It's feeding you now, and he feels it, even if you don't say a word. He senses the shift, somewhere instinctively. He used to be the center of your universe. That fed his ego, but now the axis has shifted. No longer him, it's you. You've become the sun of your own orbit, and that shatters the world of someone who was used to being the gravity. So he might try again. A casual text, a meaningless emoji, a coincidental, like on your latest post. Any move, any trigger to spark a reaction. But if you now stand rooted in your own inner ground, if you no longer dance the same emotional choreography, his strategy collapses. He can't steer a single part of your being anymore. And when he's no longer in control, he loses the greatest illusion of all, that he was irreplaceable. Losing your reaction means losing power. Losing power means losing the meaning behind the game he played, because everything he did only worked when you participated, but now you've stepped off the battlefield, and he's no longer the triumphant hero. He's just a lonely player on a shattered stage. And the cruelest part? He can't stop it, because the only way to regain control is to access your energy again, and that door is closed. Meanwhile, you begin to feel not only strength returning, but something else. Direction. Once your entire life revolved around his moods, his choices, his attention. But now for the first time you ask yourself, what do I want? What if instead of surviving in a relationship, you poured that energy into your life, your growth, your peace? And that's the turning point. This is where true power returns, because a woman who no longer exists as a reaction to a man becomes pure action. She no longer pleads, demands, or waits. She moves, not away from him, but toward herself. And this movement is not dramatic. It is not fueled by revenge or pain. It is a sacred return to her truest self. Once she gave everything: time, love, tears, belief. But now she's gathering the scattered pieces of her wholeness, not because he apologized, not because validation finally came, but because she no longer needs the external to feel worthy. Since childhood, women were taught that leaving is weakness, that one must fight, forgive, prove, and save. But the truth, fighting for a one-sided love destroys the soul. Real strength isn't in enduring pain. It's in choosing to end it. Walking away takes far more courage than staying. Staying is familiar. Leaving, it's rebellion against the system you lived in on autopilot. And that man, the one who once saw your departure as weakness, begins to realize you didn't run. You freed yourself, not from him, but from the need to be heard, understood, accepted. When you walk away, not in rage, but in clarity, not in chaos, but in quiet dignity, a rare force awakens in you, one that needs no words. You don't explain. You don't justify. You're simply no longer where you aren't respected. And that silence, it's not absence, it's presence. The presence of strength. Because a woman who refuses to be a victim stops being a target for manipulation. She becomes a force, the one who chooses where she stands, who receives her time, and with whom she shares her soul. This isn't escape. This is evolution. This is the moment you stop asking, why did he do this to me? And start asking, why did I allow it? And that shift, that change in question, is everything. You're no longer rebuilding a relationship. You're rebuilding your boundaries. Every step you take now is no longer about returning to the past, but creating a future, one with no space for those who wound you, where your worth is no longer tied to someone else's opinion, but grounded in your own inner knowing. You reclaim your space, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and in that space you are the center, not out of ego, but out of birthright. And here's where it happens. You no longer need his gaze to feel beautiful. You no longer need his approval to feel confident. You no longer need his recognition to know you are worthy of love. You become your own source. And this is the beginning of your greatest transformation, because a woman who stops pouring energy into the void begins to bloom, quietly, without a show, without the drama, from within. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Psychology of Happiness, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your story, your voice, they matter. And now comes the moment he never expected. When you're no longer trying to come back, he suddenly wants you back. Not because you became needed, but because you became unreachable. And in that light, his own actions start to weigh on him. When you were near, there were no consequences. Now he's left alone in the very emptiness he once pushed you into. And there, for the first time, he asks himself, was I ever truly worthy of her? He checks his phone. No new message, no missed call. He scrolls your profile, hoping for a clue, any sign that you still think of him. But there's nothing. What once proved his influence, your visible pain, your emotional reactions, are gone. He no longer stirs your mood. He no longer shapes your words. He no longer directs your path. And with each day, the silence that once felt like a pause becomes something final. The chaos is gone. The tears are gone. The arguments are gone. So are the rescue missions and the excuses. All he's left with is the echo of his own words, the ones he once used to belittle you. And the result? Cold, concrete, irreversible. But you're no longer the same woman he once left behind. You're not curled up in a corner, eyes dimmed with pain. You're not rehearsing the perfect speech in your head, hoping that this time he'll finally understand. You're living, truly, fully living, not to make him jealous, not to prove a point, but for yourself. You pour into your body, into your mind, into your dreams. And with every passing day, something within you grows stronger. That thing he once trampled over without thought is now becoming a stone foundation beneath your feet. You are not just healing, you are rebirthing. He may try to return through words, through memories, through gentle gestures or guilty glances, but you are no longer where he left you. Because a woman who has realized she no longer needs someone else's approval is changed forever. Now you no longer react by default. You choose, and choice is the highest form of power. This is where the impossible begins. You forgive, but not him, yourself. Forgiveness is not surrender. It is the severing of the invisible chain that kept you bound to pain. You forgive because you no longer want to carry the weight of resentment that drains your spirit. You don't welcome him back. You simply release yourself. And in that release, there is no weakness, only the purest, most mature act of self-love. And as for him, he doesn't understand what's happening. He thought you would cling. He thought he could vanish and return to the same home where you'd still be waiting. But the door, once open, is now closed. Not out of hatred, but out of healing. And that's when he finally feels it, the true weight of loss. Because loss is not when someone leaves. It's when they're no longer accessible, when their world has moved on without you. And in that moment, he faces the very beginning of reflection. If, of course, he's even capable of it. He stands before a closed door. A door that doesn't open, not because you hold a grudge, but because you've outgrown the room behind it. You didn't just walk away, you walked within. And there, you found what he never could: peace, wholeness, self-worth. He can't walk in, he can't knock, because deep down, he senses the truth. Your life no longer revolves around him. There is no room left for games, excuses, or half-truths. And this is the moment that crushes the male ego. The absence of consequences for you and the full weight of consequences for him. He used to believe you would always return, that every emotion you showed confirmed his place in your life. But now, you don't return, you don't message, you don't perform pain. At first he doubts you. Then more frighteningly, he doubts himself. Because if you're still standing, thriving, radiating, then maybe, just maybe, the problem was never you. Everything he once refused to face, all the pain he tried to lay at your feet, now comes back to him, unfiltered, undeniable, as his own reflection. And this is when he finally understands. You were never weak. You were loyal. You weren't clingy. You were loving. You weren't dramatic. You were hurt. But now it's too late. You are no longer the woman who listens to empty promises. You are no longer the one who gives second, third, fifth chances. You are the woman who finally chose herself. And that is a loss he will never recover from. Not loud, not chaotic, but silent, final, and real. He can tell himself, I'll find someone else. But somewhere deep inside, he knows. No one will ever care the way you did. No one will see the light in him that you saw, even when he couldn't see it himself. Because now he knows. Women like you don't come back. They walk away, quietly, powerfully, forever. And that disappearance becomes his most bitter lesson because it doesn't leave room for hope. It leaves only reality. And you keep moving forward, not physically, energetically. You no longer vibrate on the frequency of pain. You no longer magnetize those who come to break you. Now you are a magnet for those who see, who respect, who feel, because you see yourself. And this shift, it's not external, it's internal. And internal changes. They're the most unshakable ones. They don't ask for approval. They don't seek attention. They just are, like a fortress, a boundary that no one crosses without permission. And now he faces not just your silence, but your freedom. And that is the one thing he never knew how to handle. He was never afraid of your anger. He knew how to deflect that, how to ignore it, laugh it off, act like he didn't hear. But your freedom, he has no defense against that. Because freedom offers no hook, no bait, no opening. And for the first time, he doesn't just lose influence. He disappears from your reality altogether, as if he was never there. That is the moment the illusion of being irreplaceable collapses. He once believed he was the center of your world, that without him, you wouldn't survive, that you'd wait, beg, watch long. But now he sees you in a way he's never seen before. Not weak, not broken, not desperate, but whole, calm, confident. You're not waving from the past. You've stepped into the present. And in this new world, he doesn't exist. And now he faces the most painful question a man can ask himself. Was I ever truly needed by her? And that question, it spreads through his soul like poison, eating away at everything he once believed was solid. His ego, his certainty, his importance in your life. He remembers the moments he once overlooked. Your patience, your warmth, your eyes full of hope, your voice that forgave more than he ever deserved. Now all of it feels not just distant, but unreachable. He remembers not from love, but from the terror of loss, because he finally realizes everything he once took for granted was never guaranteed. You are no longer his, not because someone else took your place, but because he gave it up. When he failed to see your worth, when he played the game at distance, when he chose to hurt, thinking he could return whenever he pleased, but he can't. Not because you're cruel, but because you no longer wait. And in that realization, not only does his illusion of control shatter, but the image he had of himself. Jung once wrote, "The male psyche enters crisis when it loses the illusion of control." And that is what he's facing now. He's not just losing you, he's losing himself. In your eyes and worse, in his own. Because if the woman he underestimated grew stronger without him, then everything he believed about himself was a lie. And you keep walking. Not because you must, but because you can. Every step you take isn't just forward. It creates a distance he can never cross again. And now, there is silence, but not the silence after pain. This time, it's the silence within you. And it sounds like peace. You no longer wonder where he is or who he's with. You no longer check what he posts. You no longer catch yourself waiting. There's no more war inside you because there's no more attachment, not because you've hardened, but because you finally come home to yourself and he feels it, not in words and not through actions, but energetically. He senses that you no longer live in a story where he was the meaning. He's no longer the center. He no longer matters. His name no longer stings. His voice no longer trembles your heart. His attempts to return spark only one thing: indifference. And indifference isn't the absence of love. It's completion. You're not playing games. You're not seeking revenge. You're simply free. And that is the most devastating thing a man can witness. Not that you left, but that you never look back. He finally sees you became the woman who didn't just survive betrayal. You used it as fuel to rise. He can regret. He can reflect. He can try to change, but you are already too far gone. And he is no longer the man you would ever allow into your new space. And you're no longer chasing justice because your life is now filled with meaning. Not through battle, but through movement. You are not a victim, and you are not a conqueror. You are the woman who stepped beyond the story and became the heroine of her own. True feminine power is not proving your worth to a man. It's no longer needing to. Your silence, your leaving, your calm are not weakness. They are maturity. They are love for yourself. And when you rise to that level, where no opinion can disturb your inner peace, you no longer lose because you have already found yourself, and now you are somewhere he will never reach. And that is your quiet yet absolute victory.